Greetings, this is Michelle from Michelle Harrison Signature Events, and today I am honored to come to you to talk a little bit about submissions and entries for the 2021 Allie Awards. I want to thank Brad Gibson and the committee for asking me to do this, so I'm looking forward to it. Let's get started. So again, Michelle Harrison. I've been in the hospitality and event industry for over 25 years. I have won one Allie, one Diamond Award, and have been nominated for 4 Allie Awards. I served on the ILEA board from 2016 to 2018. And this year, for the 2021 Allie Awards, I'll be serving on the awards committee and the logistics committee. Let's get started. So the first question I want to answer for you is why submit? So there are many reasons to submit your work as a creative. One is credibility and the other is community. So what do I mean by credibility? Well, credibility amongst your potential clients, right? They see that you've been nominated, or if you won an Allie, you have that badge on your website or on your signature, and that does give you a little bit of credibility. And as far as community, so community amongst the Georgia event industry, your peers, right? They see that you've been nominated. They've seen that you've won the award. It helps you build your community stronger in the industry here locally. It doesn't matter what size of your business it is. You can have 50, one, be a solopreneur, a team of 2. It does not matter the size of your business. And it doesn't matter your scope of work to date. From large luxury events to small, more intimate events, you may find that your scope of work, that you have something that is definitely submission worthy. And it builds your self-confidence, right? So being nominated for an event, I know it happened for me. It builds your self-confidence in terms of the work that you put together and that you put out. And it creates a sense of pride, right? You've worked really hard on this event, you've executed this event, and now you've been recognized for it. So it creates a sense of pride as well. In addition, it also elevates your business, right? So you can adjust your fee scale. You definitely become wiser after the submission, and being around all these other creatives, you get more of a creative bug. And so you can just elevate what you offer to your clients as a whole. So what's the risk versus your return, right? So don't allow fear of self-doubt prevent you from taking the risk to enter your submission. I'm going to tell you a little story about my business. The first time I submitted for an Allie Award, initially, I don't know if I would say it was intimidating, but once I read the portal and I saw all that was required, I hesitated. And so I reached out to someone who I knew on the committee, and I was like, hey, walk me through this process, because I know they had done it before, and they shared with me their experience. But the biggest thing I want to say that they said is don't overthink it. Like, don't overthink it. Like, just look at what you've done, look at the details, and submit. Push send. That's it. And so it was very helpful, and it encouraged me to go ahead and submit in 2 categories in 2019. Life is about taking risk, right? If you win, you're happy. And if you lose, you become wiser. And so what do I mean by wiser? Well, through the process of the submission, you learn. You learn about how you structure your planning process when it comes to from beginning to end. You might tweak or do it a little different, not just for submission, but just how you do business as a whole. And so it's helpful in that way. You become wiser even on how to submit. So maybe it didn't work out for you this year, but because you've gone through the experience, you're very much so open to do it another year, and also maybe do it in multiple categories. So what to look out for? The biggest thing is the submission rules. They're very clear. They're very distinct. You just have to follow them, right? Read and understand the rules and is a major key to the success of your submission. So reading and understanding the rules is a key to the success of your submission. So I would say if you have questions, make sure you reach out to a committee member or a chair and just ask. No question's a dumb question, they say, right? So just ask. Or go to a peer that you know who submitted, maybe been nominated or won, DM me, reach out to me. You could definitely do that, and I'll help you through the process as well. Review the FAQs that they have. They're frequently asked questions. Your success in this process is definitely in the details. Don't take that lightly. And then pay close attention to your eligibility. So once the porthole is submitted, it clearly states what makes you eligible to submit. So you don't want to submit it, pay your fees to do so, and then immediately become disqualified because you're not even eligible. So that's important to pay attention to. So what are the do's and the don'ts of submitting? Don't hesitate to enter. I would say, don't compare yourself, like I said, to other industry creatives or to other companies that might be larger than yours, whether it's a photography company or a florist. And don't compare yourself to companies who have maybe won multiples and this is your first time submitting. Don't hesitate. Do it. Follow the rules. Enter in your scope of work. And also look at the various categories that exist because, you might not qualify for this category, but because the Allies have so many options for you, just read in detail what's out there for you and then submit. The biggest thing I would say is make sure that there are no visible logos. For me, my first submission, I obsessed about it. Like I just, the event that I submitted not only had my logo everywhere, but also my vendor partner creatives. All of our logos and the names of our company was sort of plastered throughout the event, which was great for us. But as far as a submission, you have to make sure that they're not visible. One thing I was concerned about is even if my logo wasn't visible, if I saw another company's logo visible, I didn't want the judges to think that maybe that was me. So I either had to do some cropping or I had to blur it out to make sure that they were not visible. That's key point. Don't compare your talents to others. I mentioned that before. So you are your own individual business and company, and you bring a lot to this industry. And so just because, the other, let's just use Bold as an example. Bold Decor, they've won many Allie Awards. Don't compare yourself to them for a few reasons. One, there are some categories in the past that companies there was no entries. So if you enter in that category, there's only one, you. The possibility of you winning is obviously very high, right? And you also just don't want to compare yourself to, what they executed and what they showed on social media versus yours, because you might not even enter that same category that they do. So again, because they have a number of categories to submit to, don't compare yourself. Don't forget to focus on the wow factor of your event. So what was it? Was it the logistical, the load in? Was it an amazing centerpiece? Was it an entryway? Just don't forget to focus on that wow factor and then go into detail during your submission on what made that a wow factor. And don't miss deadlines. That's cute. That's key. So with the Allie Award submissions, they typically give you 3 opportunities with deadlines. The early bird, which financially is the most cost effective, and then you have 2 additional dates. Just don't miss the deadlines. Now your do's. Plan ahead. Create a task list, right? So what's a task list? It is, if you know that you have an event that's submit worthy, how do you want to tackle it? What are the top 5 things that you want to make sure that you have as far as content first that will be part of your submission at the end? Make your list and create a file. Create a file on your computer, on your desktop, or however you organize your file system in your computer, and create one that's literally just for Allie submission. And then just upload things as you go into that file, because you can always come back later, clean it up, review it, edit it as needed. Have a great team. So in my company, it's just me and one other person, but that's okay. That's my team. But if you're a larger company, it might be, you have one part of your department who works in logistics, another in decor and florals, another in sales, all to build these amazing events. So you source them. Not only that, for me, although I'm a team of two, I look at my vendor creatives as part of my team. And in some instances, my clients are part of my team. So you talk to them on the front end and say, hey, this is an event that we want to submit at some point in the Allie Awards. Or if you're at the point where that the event already happens, you know that you had key people that were responsible for key things. You just circle back with them. What I would do is just create a list of questions, particularly if they're vendor partners. Create a list of questions of information that you know that you will need for your submission. Ask those questions, have them fill it out, and send it back to you. And then if you have questions beyond that to elaborate, you can always circle back with your vendor partners. Your before and after photos are huge, very important, because visually you want the judges to see how you got to your end result, right? So whether that be load-ins, torrential rain while you're loading in, the empty room or space that you're working in, and then how you got to that point. So, time lapses are always fun to do as well. You can upload that. But in addition to that, you could take photos throughout the process. So one way to do that, too, is to hire your own photographer, particularly if it's a social event. It's a good idea to hire your photographer. Just make sure that you get permission from your client. Explain to them what it is that you're doing before you do it. For me, I would say when I'm doing my corporate events, I'll talk to them on the front end and say, hey, based on our consultation and our pre-planning meetings, I think this will be a great event to submit for an Allie Award. And I talk to them, and they're fine with using the same photographer. We then just have a meeting with that photographer, say, hey, we need these detailed shots for this particular event and my client, but then this is what I might need in order to submit do my submission entry for the award show, and we're all on the same page. So in those instances, I don't necessarily have to hire an additional photographer, but if it's a social event, I totally would do that, and it's worth that investment as well. Include your event statistics. So what are those? So if you needed 1,000 florals, white florals, in order to create this amazing centerpiece, right now they're astronomical due to the times that we're living in. So a $5 stem, if you were able to get it for half that, but still a beautiful garden rose or whatever it might be, just go into details. In order to create this beautiful centerpiece, it took 1,000 of these roses, 100 of these lilies, whatever. Just make sure you include those statistics and what that cost item, whether it was a cost savings or just a cost as well, because some of the categories require you to submit based on a dollar amount. So events under, let's say, 25,000 or under 100,000 versus events that were over. So that will kind of help them know that it qualifies statistically. Build a visual story within your text. So in addition to having your photos, which is your before and after, I would say you want to tell the story, right? You want to tell the story of how you got to this point in your event, the buildup, the end result of this beautiful, amazing event that your client was super excited for, or, ended up being featured in a magazine or whatever. You want to tell that visual story in your text. And then be creative. Obviously, as an entry, putting your entry in, you don't necessarily know what the judges haven't or have seen, but I would just say if something hits you and it falls within the parameters and the guidelines and the rules of the submission, be creative and do it. Don't stifle yourself. So what is the road to win, right? So like I said, I do have one Allie. So it builds your self-confidence. I think that's, again, important. I mentioned that prepare earlier than later, and I really mean that. So I don't say it was a mistake, but what I did the first time I entered is that I kind of waited till the last minute, and it's for various reasons. One, I just wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about this event, and I also wasn't sure because there were so many players involved, and so many players that some of which I couldn't get my hands on, being able to gather all of the information needed to tell the story that I wanted to tell, to submit, to make this submission. And take good notes. So as you're going through your process, for me, when I'm talking to my clients during my planning meetings, I make notes in my CRM, I make notes in my notepad. some of those notes lay flat and they're never to be seen again. But if it's for an event that I want to submit, then I can always review and go back and say, hey, I forgot about that. Let's include this information in my text for submission. Be detailed and thorough. And so, again, with the judges, they want a clear story being told without just adding information in there that just to fill the page that doesn't really make sense, or not make sense, but just isn't needed. So when I say being thorough, it doesn't mean be long. It just means be concise. Tell a great story in your text. I talked about that. And then know that this process is worth the investment of your time and your money. Why? Because I'll go back to what I said before. Taking a risk, it's worth it. And you'll either win and be happy or lose and be wiser. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the first submission that I made, and the event that I used for my submission was the Taste of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta Airport. So if anyone knows about this event, it runs similar to the Taste of Atlanta, but it happens in the atrium in the domestic terminal of the busiest airport in the world. So I'm sure, as you can imagine, logistically, it was quite interesting, and working with the city of Atlanta and the DOT with security and all that goes along with that, having to get clearances and permission to even put like a stage in this particular space of the atrium, I had to go through multiple layers of approval. And so there was a lot of planning and pre-planning, and one department might say yes today, but no tomorrow, and there's no negotiating those points, particularly when you're dealing with fire in the city of Atlanta, the APD, all of that. So this particular event, again, it runs in the atrium. It's while the airport is in full swing of its normal activities. We typically did it on a slower day of travel, but still, again, it's an active airport. And this was in 2019. And so load-in started at 3 a.m. Everyone on the curb had a very limited amount of time to load in and get everything set and then move those trucks immediately. My prayer was that none of my vendors were late, because that could definitely change the dynamic of the load-in. And like I said, I made sure that no logos were showing, that all the information was there, and I got nominated, which was amazing. Didn't win, but I got nominated. And so, to my point that you become wiser, that definitely happened for me. And I was nominated for Most Creative Venue, non-wedding. And then I resubmitted the following year. So it's a testament to, or it's an example of persistence, right? So the second year in 2020, I was nominated for the same event, but didn't win. But my point is that it doesn't matter. You know you are talented. You know that you have a scope of work on one level or the other that is submit worthy. Just submit it, and you never know. So, and I'm going to talk in more detail about this next one that I submitted in 2020 as well, and sort of like, again, a testament of persistence and not second guessing yourself and just doing it. So this particular event is called ATL SkyPoint, and it's also powered by the airport, right? And the Taste of Atlanta gave the city, the Atlanta airport, a 40 by 50 tent to load into and sort of focus on all of the outlets in the airport. So a lot of you know, if you've traveled through the airport, that there are tons of really good restaurants. And so the Taste of Hartsfield-Jackson was the other event that I submitted, 19 and 20, was basically that too. So it was the Taste of Atlanta, but inside the airport with multiple concessions that live in the airport. And so with the SkyPoint event, they wanted to showcase those outlets at Taste of Atlanta. So those people who don't necessarily know that Echo is in the international terminal, or that all these other outlets, or that Popeyes is in D, or I think it's in D, Terminal D, I'm not sure. But regardless, that if you were, that you know that they exist, so the next time you have a layover, the next time you get to the airport 2 hours early, you can take advantage of these outlets. The The caveat to this is that they contacted me 2 weeks before the event. I was already scheduled with another client in Bora Bora, and I was very candid with this client. I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm committed to this, but I can plan it and allow my event manager to execute it. And because I'd worked with the city of Atlanta on a few other events, they trusted me, which I'm very thankful for, and we made it happen. It was an undertaking. So, decisions that we sometimes have the luxury of taking a day, a week, a month to decide, we have to make decisions in hours. And then, mind you, half of that planning process, I was literally on the other side of the world. So logistically, 4 a.m. calls, 2 a.m. calls, but we made it happen. Ironically, so with all of our vendor partners, the Taste of Atlanta, they only allow a certain amount of trucks to unload at once. And there was a altercation between two vendors for time and space, because obviously they were offloading for us, but they had multiple other vendors to offload to within a time frame at Taste of Atlanta as well. So it kind of got heated, is my understanding, and it was torrential rain. And so all of that information I included in my text to kind of talk about and to build this visual story on how we loaded this tent in mud and rain. And it was a 3-day event. So I also had to provide staff to go back each day to make sure that everything was clean and then support my client in terms of operating the event on a daily basis. So this one I submitted for in 2020 for Best Public Event. And I just shared all those details with you in terms of how it went for the load-in, but also the success of the event. So they had 3,000 patrons come through, 25 interactions. So they had these little passport things that you could scan, and you can become a SkyPoint member if you don't know what SkyPoint member. So you develop these points that you could use at the airport whenever you're traveling. But anyway, here's some of the photos as well. As you can kind of see that I submitted photos that with the space empty, had signage made, a team that we had, and just kind of how the flow. We had one of our creative vendors do the florals, and it turned out to be a 3-day amazing event, and is our floor plan as well. But again, just with all those details, I submitted this floor plan too. I talked about the rain, and I talked about all that other information. And it won. So not only was I nominated for it, it won. And literally, it was a last minute decision to submit that one because it was planned so quickly. I thought I would be missing out on some key points that I would need to add when you have more time to plan and to take notes and to strategize and all these things to add to your award, your Allie Award submission. So let's talk a little bit about strategies and planning. So one thing I would say is start early. I've mentioned it a few times. Start early with your processes, create your file, so you can start gathering that information to upload so you can have to come back to later. When you begin the process of your planning, pay close attention to what your client's conversation is. If you know that there's something very unique and authentic about the vision that your client has for this event, you can start thinking to yourself, let's mark that one as possibly being a submit-worthy event for the Allie Awards. Once you've marked that event as being submit-worthy, have a conversations with your creative partners. I mentioned that before, with your team, to kind of just talk about and lay out a plan on how you want to approach this. Or even if you just send like bullet points like, hey, this event I think is going to be something that we'll submit for the Allie Awards or for any other award, mind you, these are the detailed stuff that we want to kind of be mindful and catch throughout the process. And again, create a file strictly labeled Allie Awards, 2021 Allie Awards. That way, once you're ready, you can upload and just drop things into that file as you continue through your process. And then also, like I mentioned before, you can do high-level bullet points. So again, as you're writing out your text, you don't have to have all the information up front, but if you can at least kind of bullet point an item and then go back to that. And I'll give you an example. For an event that I just did recently, I had to get clearance for all of my drivers. I had to get the type of truck that they were using on that day. I had to have the plate number, all this information. So I just noted, high level clearance for load in for this event. And particularly when you're dealing with multiple creative partners and rental companies, like that's a lot of information to get for something that's going to happen, 3 or 4 weeks from the date. So again, that process is something that the judges will want to read. So remember, category, category, category. So the Allie Awards have a number of categories that you can choose from. So you just want to think about what or which category will best fit your event. Understand your budget, understand the scope of the event, and which category it'll fit into. And let me give you an example. So the Allies have, and these are just numbers that they have events that are $100,000 or more, or $100,000 or less in terms of budget. So based on your event and its scope, you'll know which category you fall under. Hire, with your client's permission, again, a photographer to work and get the details that you need for submission. Again, it is worth the investment. However, I will say I have some event partners that I work with, particularly photographers, that they do multiple events for me in a year. And so sometimes I'll ask them to come in and do just some detailed shots for an hour or two, and it's at a minimal or no cost. But again, that's just about having that community, right, within the event industry here in Atlanta and Georgia, and then developing those relationships. So if you have them, I would say reach out to them. I mean, all they can say is no, right? Write your entry and then walk away. I said that once before. Like, again, if you're trying to cram, particularly if you're waiting to the last minute, you're trying to cram all this information in a short amount of time, there's key things that you might miss. Your flow in which your text reads may not be desired or what it is that you want. And it also doesn't give you the time to complete it and then share it with someone that's either not in the industry or an industry friend that could read it and say, you know what, I totally get it. Like, I can visually see, based on what I'm reading, the flow of your event. So to bring this to conclusion, what I would say to you is, before you press send, is, again, just make sure that you've gone through all of your typos, that the information is cohesive, and then press send. Just do it. Pay your submission. Look out for the email for your confirmation of your submission, because, again, you can look at that and say, okay, yep, I did it in the correct category. This is, I did it in multiple categories. These are the details that matched what you submitted. So review that and then review your receipt, and you're all done. Now you just sit back and just wait to have those nominations come on in and flow. But again, the process is more than worth it for many reasons, and though most of which I've mentioned to you already. So I just want to take this minute to thank you for watching this, but also thank the Allie Awards 2021 chairperson again, Brad Gibson, and the committee for allowing me and asking me to do this, and hopefully it's helpful for you. And as event creatives, whether or not we're business owners of 100 plus employees or a team of one, we all have our why we do what we do every day. I have to say I absolutely love what I do. I've been doing it, again, for 25 plus years on one scale or the other. And those who love me and who are dear to me, they all say, you are meant to do this, what you do. In my everyday life. And I love who I do it for. In addition to my family, my friends, and my community, I do it for this little girl, Sienna Rain. She is truly my light. She is my inspiration daily. And I want her to see her mother doing what she loves and successful at it, in hopes that as she gets older and she comes into her own, she knows that she can do anything that she puts her mind to, as long as she has a passion and love for it as well. And to all of you who are looking to submit this year for the 2021 Allie Awards, I wish you much success and all the luck. Thank you.